I found a letter at my husband's grave from his other widow, so I knocked on her door. The letter was tucked under a bouquet of white lilies on Michael's headstone. I almost didn't see it, almost walked right past, too focused on the fresh flowers I was carrying, the roses Michael had always bought me on our anniversary. 32 years. 32 years of marriage, and I was spending our anniversary alone, talking to cold granite. But something about those lilies caught my eye. They were expensive, fresh, arranged professionally, not the kind of flowers you pick up at a grocery store, and Michael had been dead for 6 months. Who was still bringing him flowers? I set down my roses and picked up the envelope tucked beneath the lilies. It was cream-colored, expensive stationery, the kind you use for important correspondence. My name was written on the front in elegant script, to Michael's wife. Not to Mrs. Patricia Donovan, not to Patricia, just to Michael's wife. My hands were shaking as I opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper, the same expensive stationery, covered in the same elegant handwriting. Dear Patricia, I hope you'll forgive this intrusion on your grief. I've debated for months whether to reach out, whether I have any right to disturb your peace, but I can't stay silent any longer. My name is Elena Castellano. For the past 12 years I was married to Michael Donovan. I know this must come as a shock. I know you must think I'm insane or cruel or lying. I wish I were. Michael and I met in Chicago in 2011. We married in 2012. We built a life together, a home, a family, everything a marriage should be. I thought I knew him completely. I thought our life was real. It wasn't until his death that I learned the truth, that he had another life, another wife, another family, you. I'm not writing to hurt you or to stake a claim. I'm writing because I think we both deserve answers. Because I've spent 6 months trying to understand how the man I loved could have lived such an enormous lie. And because I think you might have questions too. If you want to talk, I'll be at the address below. No pressure, no expectations, just two women trying to make sense of the impossible. With sympathy, Elena Castellano. Below was an address in Chicago, a phone number, an invitation into a nightmare I hadn't known existed. I stood in the cemetery, the letter trembling in my hands, and felt my entire world tilt sideways. Michael had been dead for 6 months. I'd buried my husband, grieved my husband, started the slow, painful process of learning to live without him. And now this stranger was telling me that my husband, my Michael, the man I'd shared 3 decades with, had been married to someone else, had lived an entire separate life I knew nothing about. It was impossible, insane, had to be a mistake or a scam or the delusion of some mentally ill woman who'd fixated on my husband. But something in my gut, some instinct I didn't want to acknowledge, told me it was true. I looked down at Michael's headstone. Michael Donovan, beloved husband and father, 1962-024. Beloved husband, singular. But apparently there was another headstone somewhere. Another widow, another woman who'd loved him, buried him, grieved him. Another woman who thought she was his only wife. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my purse. Then I drove home, my mind racing, trying to remember anything, any sign, any clue, any moment when Michael had seemed like someone living a double life. But there was nothing. Michael had been a traveling salesman for a pharmaceutical company. He'd been on the road 3 or 4 days a week for our entire marriage. But that was his job. That was normal. I'd never questioned it, never doubted him. He'd called every night when he was away. He'd come home exhausted but happy to see me. He'd never forgotten a birthday or anniversary. He'd been a good husband, a good father to our daughter, Rebecca. How could a man living 2 lives be that good at both? I sat in my car in the driveway for 20 minutes before I could force myself to go inside. The house felt different now, tainted. Every photo on the wall, every piece of furniture we'd chosen together, every memory we'd made, all of it suddenly suspect. Had he ever really been here with me? Or had part of him always been somewhere else with someone else? I went to Michael's study, the one room in the house I'd barely touched since his death. His desk was still covered in papers, his reading glasses still folded on top of a medical journal. I'd been meaning to clean it out, but I hadn't been ready. Now I tore through it like a woman possessed. Bank statements, credit card bills, receipts, travel itineraries. I laid everything out on the floor, looking for patterns, for proof, for anything that would make sense of Elena Castellano's letter. And slowly, sickeningly, I found it. The credit card bills showed two patterns of charges. One set in our town, grocery stores, restaurants, gas stations I recognized. And another set in Chicago, different stores, different restaurants, a whole different life. The bank statements showed regular withdrawals I'd never questioned because Michael handled the finances. But now I saw them for what they were, cash for his other household. The travel itineraries showed trips to Chicago every single week, sometimes 2 or 3 days, always staying at the same hotel. Except he probably wasn't staying at a hotel at all. I found receipts for furniture, for appliances, for a child's birthday party supplies. I found a registration for a car I'd never seen, a Honda Civic registered to an address in Chicago. Elena's address. By midnight, I was sitting on the floor of Michael's study, surrounded by evidence of his betrayal, crying so hard I thought I might vomit. How had he done this? How had he maintained 2 complete lives, 2 complete marriages for 12 years? How had I never noticed? How had I been so blind? And worse, how many other people had known? His company, his coworkers, had they all been in on it? Had everyone known except me and this Elena woman? I picked up the letter again, read it for the 10th time. "We both deserve answers," she'd written. She was right, we did. At 6 a.m. I called in sick to work. Then I booked a flight to Chicago. If I was going to understand how my husband had destroyed everything I thought I knew, I was going to have to face his other widow. The house was in a quiet suburb outside Chicago, a 2-story colonial with a well-kept lawn and a basketball hoop in the driveway. It looked exactly like our house. Same style, same era, even the same color trim. Had Michael picked the same house on purpose, some kind of twisted efficiency, or had he just been drawn to the familiar? I sat in my rental car for 15 minutes trying to gather the courage to knock on that door. What would I even say? "Hi, I'm the other wife. Sorry about our husband." Finally, I forced myself out of the car and up the walkway. The front porch had potted plants, geraniums and petunias. I had the same plants on my porch. Had Michael bought them? Had he gone to a garden center and bought 2 sets of everything? I rang the doorbell before I could talk myself out of it. The woman who answered was not what I'd expected. I'd been imagining someone younger, prettier, the kind of woman a man might risk everything for. But Elena Castellano looked ordinary. She was around my age, late 50s, maybe early 60s. She had dark hair going gray, pulled back in a ponytail. She wore jeans and a sweater, reading glasses pushed up on her head. She could have been anyone's wife, anyone's mother. She could have been me. "Patricia," she asked softly. "Yes." "Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would." She stepped back from the door. "Please come in." The house was neat and comfortable. Family photos on the walls, Elena with Michael, smiling at the camera. Michael with 2 teenagers, a boy and a girl, at what looked like a high school graduation. Michael holding a baby. I stopped breathing. "You have children," I said. 3, Elena's voice was gentle. "Marco is 23, Sophia is 20, and little Lucia is 8. 8 years old. Michael had a daughter who was 8 years old. I have a daughter too, I heard myself say. Rebecca, she's 31. Elena nodded. "I know, I found the pictures. After the funeral, when I was going through his things, I found everything. The pictures of you, of your daughter, of your house. An entire life I knew nothing about." We stood in her foyer, two women staring at each other, both of us seeing our lives reflected and shattered in the other's eyes. "Coffee?" Elena asked finally. "Please." We sat at her kitchen table, 2 cups of coffee between us, and Elena pulled out a folder. It was stuffed with documents, photos, printouts. "I've been investigating," she said, "trying to understand, trying to figure out how he did it." "Did you find answers?" "Some, enough to know it was planned, methodical. He wasn't just cheating, Patricia, he was living 2 complete lives with precision and intention." She spread out the documents. "Look, he had 2 of everything. 2 driver's licenses with different home addresses, 2 cell phones, 2 email accounts, 2 completely separate financial systems." "How?" I asked. "How is that even possible?" "He worked in pharmaceutical sales. He traveled constantly. That was the cover, but he wasn't just traveling for work, he was traveling between us, between families." Elena pulled out a calendar. "I started mapping his schedule. Week 1, Monday through Wednesday in Boston with you. Thursday and Friday in Chicago with me. Weekend in Boston. Week 2, Monday through Wednesday in Chicago with me. Thursday and Friday in Boston with you. Weekend in Chicago." He alternated, like clockwork, for 12 years. I stared at the calendar, feeling sick. I never questioned it. He said it was his sales territory, that his clients were divided between different regions. He told me the same thing, that he had to cover the Northeast and the Midwest, that the travel was just part of the job. Elena's voice cracked. I believed him. I never doubted him, not once. "Did you go to his funeral?" I asked suddenly. Elena nodded, tears in her eyes. "Yes, in Chicago, we had a service at St. Mary's Cathedral. 300 people came. His coworkers, our friends, our children's friends, everyone who thought they knew him." "I buried him in Boston," I said. "At Cedar Grove Cemetery, 200 people came." "He died in Chicago," Elena said quietly. "Heart attack. He was with me. We were having dinner at home. He collapsed right there." She pointed to the living room, and I called 911. But by the time they got here, he was gone. "The hospital called me," I said. "They said my husband had died. They had my name as his emergency contact. I flew to Chicago that night. I identified the body. I made the arrangements." "They called me too," Elena said. "I was the one who rode in the ambulance. I was the one holding his hand when he died. And then the hospital staff found his wallet, found your name listed as his wife, and everything fell apart." We were both crying now, 2 widows grieving the same man, the same loss, the same enormous betrayal. "The worst part," Elena whispered, "is that I still love him, even knowing what he did. Even knowing he lied to me every single day for 12 years, I still love him." "Me too," I admitted, "and I hate myself for it." Elena reached across the table and took my hand. Her grip was warm, firm, real. "We're not crazy," she said. "We loved the men he pretended to be. The good husbands, the good fathers. Those men were real, even if the lives around them were lies." "How do we move forward from this?" I asked. "How do we make sense of it?" "I don't know, but I think we start by telling each other the truth. About him, about us, about everything." Elena pulled out more papers. "I think we need to understand the full scope of what he did, and I think we need to figure out if there's anything else we don't know." "What do you mean?" Elena looked at me and I saw fear in her eyes. "Patricia, if Michael could hide an entire wife and family for 12 years, what else could he hide? What else don't we know?" We spent 3 days together. Elena and I, 3 days of going through every document, every photo, every receipt and email and piece of evidence we could find. What we discovered was staggering. Michael had been meticulous. He'd maintained completely separate financial systems, different bank accounts, different credit cards, different investment portfolios. He'd filed separate tax returns for each household, somehow managing to keep both lives financially viable. Look at this, Elena said on the second day, pointing to a spreadsheet on her laptop. I found this on his computer. It's a budget for both households. The spreadsheet was detailed and precise. Income allocated between two homes, expenses tracked separately, savings goals for both families, even college funds for all four children, my Rebecca and Elena's Marco, Sophia and Lucia. He was planning for our futures, Elena said, her voice hollow. Both of our futures, like he thought he could just keep this going forever. How much money did he make? I asked, because none of this made financial sense. Elena pulled up another document. More than he told either of us. His base salary was $150,000, but he also had commissions, bonuses, stock options. His total compensation was closer to $400,000 a year. I felt dizzy. He told me he made $120,000. He told me $130,000. Elena shook her head. He was hiding income from both of us, using the extra to fund his double life. We found more secrets. A safety deposit box in Milwaukee, halfway between our two cities, filled with cash, passports, and documents we couldn't quite understand. Property deeds for a cabin in Wisconsin neither of us had known about. Investment accounts under variations of his name. It's like he was preparing for something, I said, looking at the documents spread across Elena's dining room table. Like he had an exit strategy. Or like he was preparing to disappear, Elena said quietly. That thought chilled me. Had Michael been planning to leave both of us, to take his hidden money and vanish into a third life we knew nothing about? We'd never know now. He died before whatever he was planning could happen. On the third evening, Elena's children came home. Marco and Sophia were in town from college for the weekend. They stopped short when they saw me sitting in their kitchen. Kids, Elena said carefully, this is Patricia. She was married to your father too. The silence was deafening. Marco's face went red. Sophia started crying. But it was 8-year-old Lucia coming down the stairs in her pajamas who broke my heart. Is this the other mommy? She asked innocently. The one from the pictures. Elena had told her children the truth. She'd had to. You can't hide something like this. Yes, sweetheart, Elena said gently. This is Patricia. She loved Daddy too. Lucia came over to me, studying my face with a child's directness. You look sad. I am sad, I said honestly. Your daddy was important to me. He's important to me too, Lucia said seriously. Then, with a child's simple logic, we can be sad together. And just like that, this 8-year-old child had more grace than anyone else in this situation. Marco was less forgiving. How could he do this? He demanded, his voice shaking with anger. How could he lie to all of us like this? And how could you, he looked at me, not know, didn't you question anything? Marco, Elena started. No, he's right to be angry, I said. I should have questioned more, I should have noticed something, but I trusted him, I loved him, and he was very, very good at lying. Sophia wiped her eyes. Does your daughter know about us? Yes, I told her after I got Elena's letter. She's devastated, angry, confused, all the things you're feeling. I want to meet her, Sophia said suddenly. Is that weird? I want to meet my half-sister. I looked at Elena. She nodded slowly. I think that could be arranged, I said, if everyone wants that. I want to meet her too, Lucia announced. I always wanted a big sister. Marco shook his head and walked out of the room. I didn't blame him. This was too much to process. That night, Elena and I sat up late, drinking wine and talking about everything except Michael. We talked about our jobs. She was a school teacher, I was a nurse. We talked about our hobbies. She loved gardening, I loved reading. We talked about our dreams, our fears, our lives before and beyond Michael. And somewhere in those conversations, something strange happened. We became friends. Not because we wanted to, not because it made sense, but because we were the only two people in the world who understood exactly what the other was going through. We were bound together by betrayal and grief, and the impossible task of rebuilding our understanding of reality. "What do we do now?" Elena asked as midnight approached. "Do we just go back to our separate lives, pretend the other doesn't exist?" "I don't think I can pretend you don't exist," I said honestly. "Not now, not after all this." "Me neither." Elena was quiet for a moment. "I know this is crazy. I know we should hate each other. We should be fighting over his memory, over his money, over who was the real wife. But I don't feel any of that. I just feel tired," I finished. "Yes, tired, and weirdly grateful that you're here, that I'm not alone in this." "I feel the same way." We sat in companionable silence, two women who should have been enemies but had somehow become allies. "There's something else we need to discuss," Elena said finally. "The legal issues, Michael's estate." I'd been dreading this conversation. He left everything to me in his will. The house, the life insurance, his 401k. It was all set up years ago. "He left everything to me too," Elena said. "Different will, different life insurance policies, different retirement accounts. According to Illinois law, I'm his widow. But according to Massachusetts law, you're his widow. So what does that mean?" "It means we have a mess. Legally, I don't know if either marriage was valid. If he was already married to you, then his marriage to me might be void. Which would make me? Nothing. No widow, no wife, just a woman he lived with for 12 years. But you have children with him. That doesn't matter legally. If the marriage is void, I might not be entitled to anything. No life insurance, no death benefits, no survivor benefits from Social Security. Nothing." I hadn't thought about this, hadn't considered the legal implications beyond my own grief. "That's not right," I said. "You were his wife, you deserve." "I deserve nothing legally if the marriage wasn't valid." Elena's face was resigned. "I've already talked to a lawyer. It's going to be complicated, expensive, and ugly." "Then we won't make it ugly," I said impulsively. "Elena, I don't want to fight you. Michael did enough damage. Let's not do more to each other." "What are you suggesting?" "I'm suggesting we figure this out together. The money, the assets, the legal issues. Let's work together instead of against each other. We'll split everything fairly. Make sure both families are taken care of." Elena stared at me. "You do that, give up half of everything. You gave up 12 years to him, same as I gave 32. Your children deserve security, same as my daughter. Why should I get everything just because I was first?" I paused. "Besides, it's what Michael should have done. If he'd been honest, if he'd divorced me before marrying you, we wouldn't be in this mess. But he wasn't honest, so we have to be." Elena's eyes filled with tears. "I don't deserve your kindness. You didn't do anything wrong. You were lied to, same as me. You're a victim here, not a villain." "So are you. Then let's stop being victims and start being survivors." Elena reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Deal." The legal process took 8 months. 8 months of lawyers and mediators and negotiations. But Elena and I kept our promise. We worked together, supported each other, made sure the process stayed civil. The legal determination was that Michael's marriage to Elena was indeed invalid. He'd been married to me first, and he'd never divorced me. But that didn't mean we ignored Elena's claim. We negotiated a settlement that split Michael's assets fairly between both households. The life insurance money was divided equally. The retirement accounts were split. We sold the Wisconsin cabin neither of us wanted and divided the proceeds. Even the house Michael and I had lived in. I sold it and gave Elena half, because she'd helped maintain it even if she'd never known about it. "Are you sure?" Elena asked when I handed her the check. "That house was yours." "That house was built on lies," I said. "I don't want it. I bought a condo near Rebecca, starting fresh." "I'm moving too," Elena admitted. "Too many memories here. Marco and Sophia are helping me look for something smaller. We'd become close over those 8 months, talking almost daily, meeting for coffee when I visited Chicago. We'd introduced our children, awkward at first, but Sophia and Rebecca had connected, and little Lucia had adopted Rebecca as her big sister with enthusiastic devotion. Michael's coworkers had been shocked by the revelation of his double life. Some had known he traveled extensively, but none had suspected the truth. His company had been horrified and had immediately launched an ethics investigation. They'd found other irregularities, expense reports that didn't quite match up, client meetings that might not have happened. Michael had been skimming from the company too, using their money to fund his elaborate deception. Did we ever really know him? Elena asked one day as we sorted through the last boxes of Michael's possessions. I think we knew parts of him, I said. The parts he let us see, but the whole person. No, I don't think anyone knew that person, maybe not even Michael himself. Do you think he loved us? The question was soft, vulnerable. Yes, I said without hesitation. I think he loved us both. I think that was the problem. He couldn't choose, so he tried to have both, and in the end he destroyed everything. Elena pulled out a photo album. It was one I'd never seen, pictures from Michael's life in Chicago. Michael with baby Lucia. Michael teaching Marco to ride a bike. Michael dancing with Elena at what looked like a wedding. He looks happy, I said, studying the photos. He was, that's what makes it so hard. He wasn't just pretending. He was genuinely happy, with me, with you, with our families. He compartmentalized so completely that each life was real to him when he was in it. That's not normal. No, Elena agreed. I've been reading about it, talking to therapists. There's actually a psychological profile for this kind of thing. Men who live double lives. They're not usually sociopaths. They genuinely love the people they deceive. But they lack something. Some ability to integrate their lives, to make hard choices, to accept consequences. So what was he? Broken, Elena said simply. In some fundamental way, Michael was broken, and we paid the price. We found one last thing in the boxes, a journal hidden in a false bottom of Michael's briefcase. We almost missed it. The journal was 5 years old, filled with Michael's handwriting. We read it together, sitting on Elena's living room floor, and with every page we understood a little more. I'm trapped, one entry read. I love them both. I love both families. I can't imagine life without Patricia, without our history, without Rebecca. But I can't imagine life without Elena either, without Marco and Sophia and Lucia. I've built 2 beautiful lives and I can't bear to destroy either one. So I keep lying, keep pretending, keep splitting myself in half. Another entry. Sometimes I forget which life I'm in. I almost called Elena by Patricia's name yesterday. Almost mentioned Marco to Rebecca. The walls are getting thinner. I'm terrified of the day they collapse completely. And near the end, I should confess, tell them both the truth, face the consequences, but I'm a coward. I'd rather die with the secret than watch their faces when they learn who I really am, what I've done. Elena was crying when we finished reading. He knew it was wrong, he knew he was hurting us, but he couldn't stop. He was an addict, I said, understanding finally. Not to drugs or alcohol, but to the lie itself, to having everything, to never having to choose or sacrifice or face reality. And we're left to clean up the mess. Yes, but Elena, I think we're going to be okay, both of us. She looked at me, tears on her face. How can you be so sure? Because we survived Michael. We survived his betrayal, his death, his lies. We survived learning that our entire lives were built on deception, and we're still standing, still moving forward. I took her hand. If we can survive that, we can survive anything. I'm writing this 2 years later. 2 years since I found that letter at Michael's grave. 2 years since my world shattered and reformed into something I never could have imagined. Elena and I talk every week. We've become genuine friends, not because of Michael, but despite him. Our children have bonded too. Rebecca and Sophia are planning a trip to Europe together next summer. Marco visits Boston regularly. And little Lucia, now 10, stays with me for a week every Christmas, and she calls me Aunt Patricia. We've both started dating again, carefully, cautiously, with all the trust issues you'd expect from women who have been betrayed so thoroughly. But we're trying. We're living. Sometimes people ask me how I can be friends with my husband's other wife, how I can forgive her, how I can stand to be reminded of his betrayal. But they don't understand. Elena didn't betray me. She was betrayed too. We're not rivals or enemies. We're survivors of the same disaster, bonded by shared trauma and shared healing. Michael destroyed our lives as we knew them. But from the ashes of that destruction, we built something new, something he never could have imagined or intended. We built a family. Not the family we thought we had. Not the family Michael pretended we were. But a real family built on honesty and understanding, and the knowledge that we're all just trying our best to survive the impossible. Last week was the anniversary of Michael's death. Elena and I met at his grave, the one in Boston, though we'd also visited the memorial marker in Chicago. We brought flowers together, roses from me, lilies from her. "Do you still love him?" Elena asked as we stood there. "Parts of him," I said honestly. "I love the man who held my hand during Rebecca's birth, the man who made me coffee every morning, the man who danced with me in our kitchen." I paused. "But I also hate the man who lied to me for 32 years, who built our life on deception, who made me doubt everything I thought I knew." "Same," Elena said softly. "I love him and I hate him. I miss him and I'm glad he's gone. I'm grateful for what we had and furious at what it cost." "We contain multitudes," I said, quoting Whitman. "We do, and so did he." Elena set her lilies on the grave. "I forgive you, Michael, not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace, and I can't have peace while I'm still angry." "I forgive you too," I said, surprised to realize I meant it. "I forgive you for lying, for breaking my heart, for making me question everything. I forgive you because holding on to anger is too heavy, and I'm tired of carrying it." We stood there in silence for a moment, two women saying goodbye to a man who'd loved us both and betrayed us both and left us to pick up the pieces. Then Elena linked her arm through mine. "Coffee. Always." As we walked away from the grave, I thought about the letter that had started all this. The letter that had shattered my world and rebuilt it into something strange and unexpected and somehow beautiful. "Thank you," I said suddenly. Elena looked at me in surprise. "For what?" "For the letter, for being brave enough to reach out, for not letting me live the rest of my life in a comfortable lie." "You're thanking me for destroying your peace." "I'm thanking you for giving me truth, even when it hurt, even when it would have been easier to stay silent." I squeezed her arm. "And I'm thanking you for being my friend, for understanding, for being the only person in the world who knows what this feels like." "Right back at you," Elena said, her voice thick with emotion. We stopped at our favorite coffee shop, the one we discovered during those early months of investigation and revelation. The barista knew us by name now, knew our orders, knew we wanted the quiet corner table where we could talk for hours. "To Michael," Elena said, raising her coffee cup in a mock toast. "The worst husband in the world who somehow gave us the best friendship." "To Michael," I agreed, clicking my cup against hers. "May he rest in peace, and may we finally live in it." We drank our coffee and talked about everything and nothing. About Elena's new job, about Rebecca's upcoming wedding, about Sophia's graduate school plans, about Lucia's piano recital. We talked about our lives, the real ones, the honest ones, the ones we were building day by day from the ruins of Michael's deception. And as I sat there with Elena, laughing at something Lucia had said, I realized something profound. Michael had tried to have two lives and ended up losing both. But Elena and I, We'd taken the broken pieces of two destroyed lives and built one honest one. We'd won. Not the way we expected, not the way we wanted, but we'd survived and we'd found something real in the wreckage. And that was more than Michael had ever managed. And that brings us to the end of Patricia and Elena's story, a tale of betrayal, discovery, and the unexpected bonds that can form from shared trauma. Their journey reminds us that sometimes the people we think are our enemies are actually our allies, and that healing doesn't always look the way we expect. What would you have done in Patricia's position? Would you have gone to Elena's house? Could you have befriended your husband's other wife? And how do you begin to heal when everything you believed was a lie? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If this story moved you, please like and subscribe for more powerful stories about betrayal, survival, and the unexpected ways we find connection. Thank you for listening. Until next time, remember, sometimes the truth destroys us and sometimes it sets us free. The difference is what we choose to build from the ashes.